Hello there, my name is sjofors, and you probably know me better as the Price Whisperer. Um, Got a weird name, of course, and it's a lot easier to find me by just Googling the Price Whisperer, and I'm going to show up all over the place, actually. Now, I'm not, I didn't invent that moniker. I was called the Price Whisperer so many times that I decided to eventually adopt it. And of course, for that reason of having a very unusual and difficult surname, at least, even though it makes sense in my native Sweden. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about the importance of putting pricing as a centerpiece in the company's business strategy. And when you do, a lot of things are going to change, actually, and it's going to transform your company to the next level. And who wouldn't want that, right? So, but let's first review a little bit how companies typically price and what happens. First off, pricing is often an afterthought, right? You have a new product that is developed. There's or a service that is defined, and suddenly there's a crisis because salespeople needs a price, right? Or there is a trade show and you need a price list for that, or there is a press release that's going to go out with information about this new product or new service, and you need a price. And often this leads to what I call the stormy pricing meeting. And I have to admit that I've been through many of those myself. And what happened here, of course, is that you have representatives from sales, from product management, from finance, and from marketing, and they're all sitting there trying to decide what the price is. Nobody has any information more than possibly cost information of the product, and that's it. And then everybody's got very strong opinions. Sales typically want lower price because that they believe that makes their life easier. Marketing often say, "Oh, we want value pricing." And then when you press them on what value, they often don't know, right? And finance, they say, well, we want higher price because we want higher margin. And that can be discussions that goes on for, an hour, longer time maybe. And the conclusion is often that whoever happened to have the highest seniority among these folks slam his or her fist in the table in the conference room and say, this is going to be the price. Is that going to be the right price? Probably not. But that also means that a company like that hasn't gone through the thought process of putting pricing as a centerpiece in the business strategy. And pricing, like what I just mentioned in that stormy pricing meeting, really leads to something that you may want to call market price, which is a guess, because unless what you sell is publicly published, like oil and grains and pork bellies and stuff like that, you wouldn't know the market price. So market price is a euphemism for guessing. Some companies obviously use cost plus as their basis for pricing, and of course you need to know your cost. There's no doubt about that, because you don't want to sell below your cost. But cost should not form the basis for a price. Two very different things, of course. And the other way, very common way of pricing, is to try to look up a competitor and set the same price. May appear simple if you're in the market where competitors have prices on their website, but in fact, even if they do, you still often don't know what actual prices they're using when they're selling, what bundles they do, what special deals they're making, and so forth. And it could be that you look them up and they are geo-targeted on their website, so you will see a different price than somebody else in a different location. And then what's the basis of, what's the value of that reference? Or maybe they are changing their prices on the website all the time. in a attempt to hone in on what would be the right price for them. And again, you take reference of a price that may not be the actual selling price. And if your competitors doesn't have prices on the website, it's almost impossible to get hold of their prices. And you may have friendly joint customers, but they are rarely willing to divulge prices of a competitor to your company. And if they do, it's half a price list, or last year's price lists, or a price from a quotation where they didn't buy, or whatever, and same if you sell through a channel of sorts. So what I mean with putting pricing as a centerpiece in the organization is that in all levels in the organization, certainly executive and managerial positions, companies need to know what difference pricing make to the company's profitability. And as we've talked about earlier in this series, profits has the highest leverage on prices because it works on the top line, right? And in fact, any company's profitability, it comes from only three variables: the cost of the operation, the total sales, and the price of whatever you sell. And of those, if you increase, do this thought experiment, if you increase sales volume with 1%, profitability goes up 3.5% for the average company. The same thought experiment for sales volume, same experience for cost. If you can reduce your cost with 1%, profitability goes up 5.5%. But if you can increase your price or decrease your discount with 1%, profitability goes up 11.3%. Now, obviously, this is for the average company, and no company is average. So you should do that very simple calculation yourself for your company to know. Anyway, when the company knows this on an executive and a managerial level, the company kind of knows, right? But it rarely act on it until you do it in a very what I shall say, practical, specific, actionable way, as what I just mentioned, and that means that many small decisions are going to be different, right? Product management is going to say, what feature will I have to add so I can add more price? How can I position this product in such a way that it is better perceived by customers, and because of that give us the opportunity to have a higher price? Marketing will in a similar way, they would say, how do I market to the customer segment that would support higher prices, and what messages do they want to hear, and do they want to be exposed to because it supports higher prices? Sales, a lot of things are going to happen with sales. First of all, you want to understand, company will think about and understand what sales channel is supportive of higher, more profitable prices, and what sales methodologies are supportive of higher prices. And when it comes to compensation, companies will start to think to themselves, well, maybe we shouldn't allow our salespeople to give away 15% discount when they sell something. Maybe we should only allow them 10%. And the same obviously goes the escalation ladder going up. So sales managers may only be allowed 15% instead of 20, sales VP 20% instead of 25, and so forth. And not only that, the prices itself, the company is going to look at how can I set up a pricing scheme or a pricing strategy that will minimize sales friction and maximize what people would be willing to pay. And so many small decisions are being changed with this when it comes to product or services, the go-to-market strategy, the way the company sells, and so forth. And all of this leads to higher profitability, right? Now, what do you do with your higher profitability? Well, you don't just have the money sitting there in the bank. Well, actually, a few company does, but that's very unusual. Instead, what you do is that you reinvest them in your own company. More profit means more resources to develop products that better meet the customer's need, more resource to actually understand your customer's need, more resource to develop marketing that is more effective, more resource to sell, develop different sales channels and do market development that way, that will will lead to higher sales volume at higher prices. And in short, more resource to become more competitive, right? And that all comes from the entire company, and especially the executives and managerial levels in the company are totally on board on a business strategy that is focused on having pricing in the centerpiece, because it changes everything, right? And why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to take the company to the next level? And I obviously have many examples of this, because this is what we do in my company, help companies to put pricing in the centerpiece of the organization. And we have seen things like over a few years, revenues goes up with 5 times, with 10 times, right? Over a year it can double. And that of course have enormous ramifications on the company itself, on shareholder value and everything they can do. Oh, I forgot that you get more resources to simply hire the best people. That makes a difference by itself, and the best people are obviously pretty expensive. So anyway, I hope this was informative, and I want you to go back into your company and think about this. How would you do to put pricing as a centerpiece in your company? Think about it. What do you need to do? How do you need to train your people? What information do you need? Information that you already have, obviously. In many cases, pricing should be based out of willingness to pay, and which is what we do in my company, measure willingness to pay in the market, and that's crucial. But many other decisions can also be made just by focusing on pricing. All right. Like I said, hope you found this valuable, and I'm looking forward to see you next time. Thank you so much.